Welcome, and thanks again for participating in the evaluation of SBO proposals for FWO. In this video, we'll familiarize you with how to assess SBO proposals. Feel free to contact FWO for any additional questions, or alternatively, the European Science Foundation if you have been contacted by ESF to participate as an external referee. In this clip, we'll provide an overview of the SBO assessment framework with the SBO scoring grid as its cornerstone. Whether you are an external peer reviewer, a member of a thematic expert panel, or a member of one of the SBO steering committees, the assessment framework remains the same throughout all phases in the evaluation. The characteristics of the SBO program and the evaluation process are explained in other clips available on the FWO SBO webpage. Each SBO proposal is evaluated on three main aspects. The first looks at the quality of the research. The second assesses the potential for economic or societal impact. These two aspects are equally important and carry equal weight in the evaluation. A third aspect considers the expertise of the team and the adequacy of the available infrastructure. Each of the aspects is further divided into specific criteria. The scientific aspect of the assessment framework consists of three criteria. First, does the proposal add value to the international state-of-the-art, and is it high-risk, high-gain, yet still realistic basic research? Second, is the research plan thoroughly substantiated and aligned with the research objectives? And third, are the objectives, milestones, deliverables, and requested resources clearly defined and balanced with effective project management and mutual interactions among partners? As the first two criteria are thought to be the most important ones, they carry a double weight in the scoring. Likewise, the utilization aspect is evaluated through three criteria. First, does the project have potential for economic or societal impact, and is the application potential well substantiated, in particular for Flanders? Second, is there a realistic and well-developed plan for either spin-off creation after the SBO project or for transferring results to users, including early involvement and a clear path and commitment from stakeholders for follow-up R&D? Or, in particular for projects with a societal finality, implementation activities. This commitment should be well defined in the letters of intent attached to the proposal. Finally, does the project contribute positively to sustainability? Not all SDG challenges are eligible for an above-average score. Eligible indicators are defined in a separate manual, available on the webpage and updated yearly. As before, the first two criteria for the utilization are thought to be the most important ones, and thus they carry a double weight in the scoring. The third and last aspect on competence and infrastructure consists of two equally weighted criteria. The first mostly assesses whether all necessary expertise and infrastructure is available in the consortium. The second criterion addresses the track record of the consortium with respect to successful transfer and utilization of research results. In particular, concrete impact following from previous SBO projects, as described by the applicants, is considered. All criteria are scored on a scale from 1 to 10, and a score of at least 6 is required on each of the criteria for the proposal to be eligible for funding. Central to a consistent scoring over all SBO projects is the SBO scoring grid available on the website. All evaluators are expected to adhere to the scoring grid as closely as possible. For each of the criteria, detailed descriptors delineate scoring pairs and describe what is expected. Please note that a separate scoring grid is available for proposals with an economic and with a societal finality. Yet another separate scoring grid is available for economic proposals explicitly aimed at the security and defense industry. For each criterion, the baseline score is a score of 7, which is applicable if the proposal shows no shortcomings at all with respect to the criterion being assessed. only when all additional requirements mentioned in the scoring grid are met, an exceptional score of 9 or above can be awarded. Conversely, any minor shortcoming automatically reduces the score below 7, and multiple minor shortcomings or major shortcomings take the score down even further. Please note that the list of potential shortcomings mentioned on the scoring grid is by no means exhaustive. As only flawless proposals are to be scored with a score of 7 or above, scores of 5 or 6 should not be exceptional. On the other hand, it is highly unlikely for a proposal to score in the highest or in the lowest possible category for all of the criteria. If your score deviates from the default, please substantiate and do so in both directions. A score in the range 9-10 should also be supported by a thorough explanation in which aspects it excels and why. In that sense, copy-paste statements are not considered very helpful. As always, please comply with the principles of the scoring grid, as it is the only way to arrive at a fair assessment for each of the proposals. As some of the criteria, particularly on the utilization aspects, are less common in the assessment of research proposals, the last part of this video is focused on some specific attention points for these criteria, which are, again, all detailed in the SBO scoring grids. Regarding the criterion on relevance and strategic importance, a first question is whether the scientific approach is fully in line with the intended utilization. The utilization potential of the proposal is foremost assessed by the potential as substantiated by the applicants. While you may not be very familiar with the Flemish context, bear in mind that the added value for Flanders is important, and a first indicator here too is the Flemish presence in the advisory board. Finally, in order to score in the highest possible range for this criterion, very strong statements must fully hold for the proposal at hand, such as its potentially disruptive nature and its very broad applicability. For the criterion on utilization approach and knowledge transfer, please note that having stakeholders in an advisory board is not an exception. For SBO proposals, such a board is in fact mandatory. For SBO projects with a spin-off finality, while not required, in practice, most of these SBO projects still do compose a board, consisting of, for example, potential customers or investors. To be a formal member of the advisory board, a letter of intent is required. In absence of such a letter, an organization is not considered part of the advisory board and should not be evaluated as such. Moreover, letters of intent should contain much more than an expression of interest. Rather, the letters require a rationale for taking part and a commitment for follow-up activities after the end of the SBO project. For economic SBO projects, a limited financial contribution is mandatory, in absence of which the involved organization is again considered not part of the advisory board. While an in-kind contribution can be provided instead, the letter of intent needs to specify what this in-kind contribution is and needs to be plausibly of the same value as the financial contribution. Taking part in the meetings of the advisory board is not an in-kind contribution. Finally, to score in the default range of 7 or 8, the advisory board needs to cover the whole value chain, involving not only end users, but also service or technology providers, regulatory bodies, etc., that would be required to allow for the intended utilization to be rolled out. Impact of early interactions on the project proposal should be apparent from the text, and stakeholders should commit as concretely as possible to follow up R&D and/or implementation activities, also specifying what these activities would be. For the criterion on sustainability, a score in the highest range can only be justified if an eligible indicator, as listed in the SDG manual, has been claimed. Claiming an eligible indicator, however, is a necessary but not a sufficient condition for assigning such a score. The contribution needs to be directly aimed at obtaining the specific indicator, and the burden of evidence here too lies with the applicants. If sustainable development is not claimed by an applicant, if substantiation is lacking, or if the contribution is indirect, a default score of 7 is assigned instead. Thank you once again for joining the evaluation of SBO proposals. Please contact us if you have any further questions or need assistance. If you are an external referee invited by the European Science Foundation, please contact ESF directly using the email address shown on this slide.